All right, everybody, welcome back to the A to Z Sports Film Room channel. Joe DeLeon here with my co-host Ryan Roberts. Today, we are going to be answering questions, as we always do, from our listeners on the NFL Draft and college football. A reminder, if you're joining us wherever you might be hopping in, hit the like button on YouTube, leave a comment in the chat, and we are going to be prioritizing questions that are sent to us on YouTube. So if you happen to be scrolling, you see us on Twitter, head on over to the A to Z Sports Film Room channel so that you can send us questions that we will answer. We've got a few that we're going to get to. We're going to start by talking about offensive linemen. But before we get there, Ryan, how you doing?
You almost called me Sean. Great start to the show. I'm just kidding, man.
I didn't.
Joe, I was pleasantly surprised when I posted the thread yesterday for 2026 NFL Draft and college football questions. I was expecting a lower response because, I mean, we're just getting started in the 2026 class, but there were a lot of questions, man. So I think people are already excited about next year's class, which was kind of interesting to see.
There's definitely a lot to get excited about, and I also was like pleasantly surprised by like people aren't just generally asking annoying like quarterback questions. I feel like what always happens like the first couple of weeks right after the draft, I feel like everybody's like, is this quarterback good? Is that quarterback good? Is this quarterback worth drafting in the first round? I'm glad that we're kind of getting into the weeds, which prompted the first question. Let's jump right into it.
Yeah.
Somebody asked us, Shepard at Sickle Lime on Twitter asked us the top 5 offensive tackle ranks. Now, we're not going to sit here and rank the top 5 offensive tackles. I think that this no.
What?
Well,
Okay.
have you watched enough offensive tackles that you could rank them?
I mean, I could rank offensive tackles of the people I've watched, but I mean, it wouldn't be super educational because I haven't watched
Right.
enough of the top guys at this point. So yes, agreed.
I wanted to start a conversation though talking about the offensive linemen in this class because it seems to be one of the strengths, and depending on if the offensive line class ends up improving certain guys into playing to expectation and playing to their potential, we could see a lot more guys go in the top 15. And last year it was relatively weak. It wasn't a super exciting tackle group. So to have this bounce back with a lot of names that are already starting to circulate, it provides a lot of promise. On that note, throw it to you first.
Yep.
Who are some of the, not to rip off like 10 straight guys, but like 2 guys that have already like really caught your attention?
Drew Shelton from Penn State is the top ranked guy I have right now, top rated guy
Really?
overall. Yes, man, I like Drew Shelton
Tackle.
a lot. Yes, the left tackle for Penn State, number 66. He is about 6'5". He's about 310 pounds or so at this point. He reminds me a lot of Christian Darrisaw. Like my same thoughts I had of Christian Darrisaw when he was coming out of Virginia Tech.
Mm-hmm.
There was some rawness to his hand usage. He was a little bit late with his punch at times. There was just like technical things that he needed to be better at. But Drew Shelton is a good athlete, man. Like good athlete. They do a lot of stuff with him, like flexed out, nasty split. Like they'll motion him across because he's their best athlete up front by a large margin, in my opinion. But that kid's flexible. That kid has good foot quickness. I think his length is like pretty average for NFL, but like I do think that there's a developmental upside where Drew Shelton could end up being in the OT1 conversation when all is said and done. I'd like Drew Shelton a lot from Penn State. Whole lot.
I knew that he was a good player. I knew that he was one of those guys that, like, when we're talking about like key returners coming back for the upcoming season, he was somebody to know. But I knew they haven't watched it. That kind of shows how like there is a real diverse group of players.
Yep.
At tackle specifically. We'll talk about some of the interior guys in a second.
It's also really early in the process, obviously, right? So like
right.
There's a few offense tackles that I have not gotten around to, obviously, at this point. Here, can I give you one more, Joe? Can I give you one more
go ahead.
before we get into a couple of your guys? Here is my sleeper. Okay. In the class. Connor Moore, offensive tackle now for Michigan State. That was the transfer from Montana State. So he was the starting left tackle, left guard last year for Montana State. Started 3 games at left guard when there was an injury early in the season. Flex bet out to left tackle. He was a 2-year starter at Montana State as a Richard freshman and Richard sophomore. He transferred this offseason to Michigan State, Connor Moore, and he's going to start at right tackle for them. Again, 6'5", about 310 pounds right now. The kid is very athletic. He's got some natural pop in his hands. I do have questions if he's a guard or a tackle in the next level because I don't think his length is great. But Connor Moore, Michigan State, I think is going to end up being a little bit of a sleeper in this class when all is said and done.
When you say sleeper, how high realistically could you see him going?
I have a top 150 on him right now, and I think that he could be a top 100 pick if he has just
Okay.
like if he just has normal redshirt sophomore to redshirt junior jump as far as his play. I think he could be in that bucket. And plus, he's playing the Big Ten now, right? So like he's going to have games against some really good pass rushers in 2025, which I think will answer some of those question marks as far as like level of competition when he was playing at Montana State.
Right. Right. Yeah. There were some good FCS linemen and G5 linemen that made jumps this past year. I think that he is an interesting name to keep track of. One guy that we were texting a little bit about yesterday, I really like Isaiah World from Oregon. He is somebody who has really caught my attention. I mean, he's enormous. He's 6'8". He's over 300 pounds. He was a little tricky to evaluate and watch because at Nevada, he wasn't really squaring off with anyone that was like a really tough matchup for him. They didn't really have a very difficult schedule where they were seeing a lot of good pass rushers. And his film's a little inconsistent. It's really hard for him to play low when you're that tall. It kind of plays into the conversation when we talk about tackles is like, what is too tall? But the one thing that you can't coach on him is the length. And he is pretty flexible still for his size. Like there's a lot of times I've seen plenty of 6'7" tackles that just are waist benders and that are just leaning and it's really uncomfortable. It's really hard to watch. And I think a lot of times those guys end up being overhyped just because they're tall. But Isaiah World, with a chance to work with a really good O-line coach who has developed Connerly, who developed Johnny Cornelius, who made a jump from Rhode Island to Oregon, and then also to get to square off with a lot of great defensive linemen in the Big Ten. Like this is a real chance for World to place himself in the top 10 picks if he has a really good season.
Would you say he has all the potential in the world?
I will end this live stream. I will end this live stream. I promise you that.
No. But I echo a lot of the same sentiments. I remember, so in the transfer portal this offseason, there were two big offensive tackles that everyone talked about. One was World, the Nevada kid who was picking between Oregon, Ohio State, and the other one was the Rice offensive tackle, the Ethan on I don't know how to pronounce his last name. World was the better player by a landslide, in my opinion. Like, I don't even think it was close. He is a very gifted athlete, Joe. He reminds me a lot of Josh Simmons in the sense of Josh Simmons needed to get stronger. That was the big thing going from San Diego State to Ohio State. Josh Simmons needed to improve his play strength, improve his technique. If World does both those things, then you're in a good spot. We are also, and we're not going to put the name out there, but we are in a group chat with a current NFL scout, right? Who said people at Oregon are actually higher on, some people at Oregon are higher on Isaiah World than they were with Josh Connerly, and Josh Connerly just went in the first round. So some context there. Yes, I think that there is a very good chance that Isaiah World could be a massive, massive riser in this class.
I absolutely think that because the big thing with him is that we talk about like tools and what's going to end up translating. And it's just to have a player that big and a chance for him this offseason to refine before he makes the leap to the NFL, something that we've never really had before in the NFL draft process until the last 4 years, which is one of the things that I love. I kind of like these guys, the Josh Simmonses of the world, where they go somewhere and they play early, they get on the field, and they start to show like, oh man, like he's got X trait. He's got great feet. He's got great arm length. He knows how to use his arms really well, but his technique, it's all over the place. Transfer up to go to a bigger program and then show what you can do. Hopefully he does end up taking that step. Does he still have eligibility if he theoretically
I think he has 2 years
decided not to declare?
Yeah.
So he could do the whole Josh Simmons thing if he wanted to.
He could, or he could end up being OT1 in this class. Like you never know. I mean, he has that type of upside to him. It's going to be really fascinating. Because we always talk about like the teachables versus unteachables. We talk about that with offensive tackles a lot. Isaiah World, this is why Isaiah World's exciting. The things that Isaiah World needs to improve on are things that he can improve on, right? Like if my scouting report said kid lacks length, can't play outside of his frame, guys, that can't get any better. Like his arm length is not going to be you're not going to increase arm length by a lot outside of the stretching that you do before the combine or the pro day. For Isaiah World, it's just, he needs to get stronger. And you know what can get him stronger, Joe? Going from, all due respect to Nevada, but going from Nevada's strength and conditioning and nutrition program to Oregon's. That's the natural jump that he needs to take. Same thing with Josh Simmons. So yes, all those things can absolutely improve, and I think they will improve ultimately.
We've got a couple people throwing some comments in the chat. Looks like people, as usual, it takes like the first 15 minutes for people to start funneling in. If you are joining us, hit the like button And also send us just a thought, question, whatever it is about the 2026 NFL draft, the 2025 college football season. Even if it is a recruiting question, we will answer everything that is put in the YouTube chat. So please do so, whatever thoughts you have. I want to bring up Caleb Lomu. So you already talked about Shelton being your number one tackle. I am enamored by Lomu, man. Like he was one of the smoothest offensive linemen that I've watched over the past couple of years. I couldn't have been more excited watching his tape. He moved really fluidly. He had one of these guys that just like sat into his anchor really, really well. He was a player that knew how to use his hands really effectively in pass pro.
Good flexibility for his size.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
I think the big thing with him is maybe he doesn't end up being the first tackle taken, but I'd feel really comfortable saying at this current moment, I feel like he's going to be a top 15 pick. He's one of those guys that could just end up getting pushed down behind somebody who has like a really good combine performance, but he does everything for me for him at the current moment to go in the top 15.
So I can't tell that story because it's a little bit of inside information. I remember watching Caleb Lomu in high school and I liked him a lot. He's out of the state of Arizona, I believe, if I remember correctly. He was, Joe, his senior year, he was 255 pounds, 260 maybe. He was a really good track and field athlete, though, a thrower for the track and field team. Flexible, athletic. He was just about getting stronger. And now he's over 300 pounds, obviously. Lomu has all the talent in the world. It's just the natural stuff. Like I just said, when we just talked about Isaiah World, you can insert into Lomu's thing right now. He needs to continue to get stronger. His technique needs to be take a step forward. And I also think he needs to play a little bit more aggressively in the run game. Like pass blocking, I think is there already. Like he's got good flexibility. He's got good hips. He's got good bends. He's got good foot quickness. It's all there. He needs to be more assertive as a run blocker. If he takes those steps, though, there's developmental upside. The great thing about him, though, is he's only going to be a redshirt sophomore this year. So this might be a 2027 kid eventually. He might be a 2026. Like we have no idea.
I'd be so disappointed if he is. I really hope he doesn't go back.
I mean, I don't know, man. It happens, right? Like the guys go back for additional years. I mean, I don't know. We'll see what the progression, for Caleb Lomu is, but I do think that he has a lot of upside that he brings to the table.
So we already have a few questions that are being thrown in here about the tackles. Let's go to this first one that's on Twitter. Again, reminder, questions, send them in the YouTube chat and also hit the like button if you haven't done so. Anthony Russo asks, have you guys watched Caleb Tiernan from Northwestern? That's the fun part, by the way, this summer is learning how to pronounce everybody's names and then getting yelled at for when you don't pronounce it right. Have you watched him? What do you think of him?
Number 72, 6'7", 329. I think he's kind of lumbering. Like I just don't think he's a very good athlete. He's got size. He's got requisite strength for position. I imagine he's going to be a guy that does really well in the weight room from everything I've seen. I think there's a little bit of lack of flexibility and foot quickness. I wasn't a huge fan of him, to be honest. I think I had a top 250 or a PFA grade on him. Like I wasn't a big fan of Caleb Tiernan, to be honest.
Okay. That's brutal.
That was a little brutal. I'm sorry. I was trying to be nice as I can.
All right. We've got a couple questions in the YouTube chat again. Send them in the chat. Thoughts. We're getting a lot of great contributions about the tackles. I kind of like this. Everybody's chiming in with their offensive linemen that they're interested in. Emmanuel Pregnon is interesting. If you ask a USC fan, he is the biggest piece of S in the world because he bailed on them to go to Oregon. I mean, good for him for deciding that he wants to actually go, play for a winning program. Pregnon, though, what do you think of him? He seems like a decent interior lineman that transferred up and he's played a lot of snaps. So there's going to be value in that wherever he lands.
I mean, he's big and powerful, right? And he's got decent explosiveness, so there's value there for sure. I think his technique is still bad. I think that his aiming points are pretty bad, both with his hand placement and also just with his landmarks on the second level. So I think just angles just generally is just not great right now for Pregnon, but he's 6'7", 325, and he's pretty explosively powerful, right? So there's building blocks certainly as an NFL offensive lineman there for sure.
I think too, like with a guy like that like as long as you're not like playing 6 years of football and ass for all 6 years and don't really have anything to go.
Isn't he?
I think he is. Yeah, I think he is. But my point was that I think that in the modern version of college football, for these types of guys that go back to school and stick around and have a lot of experience underneath their belts, like to me, it's so easy just to stamp on a floor for their projection to go, he at the very least, he's going somewhere in day 3. He's going somewhere on day 3 because an NFL team is going to talk themselves into it. It happens all the time. If we went back to all of the day 3 offensive linemen, we could handpick like, okay, this guy was clearly an NFL team saying he's played a lot of snaps. He'll do great as a backup for our team. So I think at the very least, that's kind of what comes to mind with me with Pregnon.
It's a floor, like it's a base floor, right? He brings the size and physicality, just the power profile to stick on the next level for sure. Like, is there developmental upside? Could he end up going top 150 and being a developmental starter at some point? It's possible.
All right, Brian asks us, how good can Charles Jagasaw be and how high could he go if he declares? I don't think he's going to declare. I mean, he hasn't. It's a good question. And I think that he's somebody that's going to get brought up a lot. I remember you and I talked a lot about this in the preseason last year. And we were saying like, man, like he in 2026 could end up being one of the top tackles taken. Everybody's really hyped about him at Notre Dame and gets hurt. He goes down, comes back at the end of the season during the playoff run.
Played really well. Yeah.
I'll defer to you to talk about him, but like I feel like because he missed this whole year, 1 year as a starter as an offensive lineman is just so tough, and he would probably be incentivized with all of these names that we're already starting to build buzz for to go back next year, be a part of a really good Notre Dame team, make a little bit more money, and then declare.
Well, I think experience matters so much at 2 positions more than others, and that's offensive line and quarterback. Like, experience matters. You rarely ever see guys that are 1-year starters at those spots go in and be successful NFL players. Like, it just matters so much. Joe, he is 6'7". He's 325 pounds. He's explosive. He's got foot quickness. He's a wrestling background. There's really not much not to like about Charles Jagasaw. The inconsistencies that he had on film against Penn State and Ohio State when he played this past year were just based upon him being inexperienced. Like, it's just like hand placement stuff. It's angles. Like, it's stuff that can be very much improved, but he has all the building blocks to be a great player. The interesting part is that do you know where he's going to start this year?
Well, so that was what I was going to ask you. I always reference our lads at this point because like we're kind of just guessing. He was projected to start at guard.
He's going to be their starting right guard, barring something happening. Like, Anthony Knapp's going to stay at left tackle. So I don't think that
so you and I talked about this. I thought that it was going to be the other way around. I thought that Knapp was going to move inside because he's not as like. I think Jagasaw is more mobile in space, and I think that Knapp is more of a grinder.
I was hoping this offseason that there would be a true left tackle competition, and you would see Jagasaw get an opportunity to beat out Anthony Knapp. But it seems, unless something changes, theoretically or systematically, I don't know. Anthony Knapp's gonna be a left tackle for Notre Dame, and I think Anthony Knapp has talent. I think he's a more natural fit inside than Charles Jagasaw is, though. Like, I think Jagasaw could play any spot basically on the offensive line that he feels like. Anthony Knapp, I think, is definitely more of an interior player than a true tackle on the NFL level for sure, college even. But I think that Charles Jagasaw is going to start at right guard this year, and I think he'll probably end up being an All-American. Like, I think he's that talented, man. Joe, he was cold, okay? Hadn't played a game all season.
Very good point.
He had a pec injury, and then what's he do? He goes up against Penn State, gets thrown in the game to play right guard, and what did he do, Joe? He was the best offensive lineman on the team. Like, just flat out the best offensive lineman on the team. And what happened when he got inserted? They were losing the game, and it looked hopeless for a few minutes. It was like, oh man, Penn State's going to roll Notre Dame. It might happen. And then Jagasaw comes in, and he completely changes the format of that football game. And he dominated them. They could not run the ball in the first half. You know what they did in the second half? They ran the ball down their throat because Charles Jagasaw was in the football
running everyone over. Yeah.
So he was tremendous in that game. And then he went against Ohio State, and again, first start of the year in general, but also throwing him at a left tackle after playing right guard the week before. And he played really well. I think he gave up like 1 pressure in the game, but like he played exceptionally well against one of the best fronts in college football. He's only started 2 games in his career. So again, projecting to be in the 2026 class is probably a little bit rich right now. But if you told me that Charles Jagasaw ended up being a first-round pick whenever he chose to declare, would not be shocked. If you told me he was at least a top 50 pick, would not be surprised one bit. The kid is exceptionally physically gifted. He just needs to stay on the field this year. He needs to play.
Right. It's just like the one-off injury that he suffered is just so extreme because a pec injury for an offensive lineman is just so hard to come back from. So I think that the expectations should be super high. anytime that you have a guy who people believe could be an elite tackle that's moving into guard, he is going to find a way to succeed. And I think that the small sample size of him getting tossed in when he did is a really good example of that. IGK brought up Emil Wagner. He said if Emil Wagner can get above 300 pounds, Emil Wagner can get above 300 pounds and take another, again, trying to learn how to pronounce guys' names and getting yelled at for it. And you're the one.
Sorry. I'm sorry. Well, nobody can yell at you in the chat. I mean, you can't hear anybody.
It's true. So, but I made that point earlier because like I'm still learning how to say these guys' names. I always get really bothered when people get really upset about a name pronunciation, especially when you're talking about a lineman. The commentators don't say their names. A lot of the times, guys that have hard names to pronounce are not said correctly whatsoever on the broadcast. They're usually so long.
Or they're said like 3 different ways throughout the
My one major complaint as a host is I wish more schools would do the damn name pronunciation guide on the website. And it's so easy. You just go up to the kid during spring practices, after practice, say, can you record yourself saying your name? And then you put it on the website. So a couple of teams do this, and it's so easy, and it makes our job easier. It makes us be able to respect these guys' names and their impact as players and whatnot. I just, that is my one random, very specific issue.
So some have the audio player that you're talking about, that you press the button and they say it out loud. Also, some others just have the, phonetically.
I don't like that, though. I don't like that.
But at least you can figure it out. You can figure it out, but it's better than nothing. It's better than nothing, but
it's better than nothing. But at the same time, it's not always, those phonetic pronunciation guides are never always as clean as they could be. Like there's always something off. You always still find a way to mispronounce it. We're human beings. All right. To get back to football,
Emil Wagner.
Emil or Emil? Emil Wagner.
Listen, Emil Wagner.
I had a teammate named Emil.
Really?
Yeah. He was a defensive tackle.
Forget it. I'm not
Emil Lamarca. He was an Italian guy from New Jersey.
Well, Emil Wagner is not Italian. So.
I understand that. His comment on Wagner from IGK, if he can get above 300 pounds and take another step this season, do you think he'll get drafted? I think he is another guy who has a lot of potential that needs to go back to school at the end of the season and then declare the following year. At the beginning of last season, you and I broke down the Texas A&M Notre Dame game, and one of my big takeaways was that I thought he showed a lot of promise. I thought he looked really fluid, but he's too damn lean. He just looks way too thin, and it impacts his ability to generate force, to go up against guys that are stronger than him. You saw it against some of these really powerful Texas A&M defensive linemen. The potential is there. Notre Dame always finds these guys that are great athletes and then eventually develop them into premier players. But he is a guy who I think definitely needs to go back after this season.
I'm worried about him a little bit as a draft prospect because he's had a hard time keeping weight on. Like he's up to 293 pounds now. He came in at like 260, but like it just has not been easy for him to keep weight, like to get weights and then to keep it ultimately. And you know how I feel about that type of stuff from a body type perspective? I don't think he's a naturally big guy. Like he's a tall guy. Obviously he's long as hell. I bet his arms are probably like 35 inches. Like he's got crazy length for the position, but I don't think he's a naturally big guy. He kind of reminds me of like Mike McGlinchey. Like Mike McGlinchey's a guy where it's just like it took forever to put the weight on. Now he held it and remained athletic, which is why he's an NFL player. I think Emil Wagner is going to play in the NFL. This is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is for him to be a high-level draft pick, though, he needs to put that weight on and he needs to continue to be athletic because like that's his big plus, a big selling point to an NFL team. I'm just a little bit worried the more weight that you put on him, it's going to zap his athleticism a little bit because I think it's getting zapped already. Like I don't think he's as flexible as he was like previous years because he's got a lot more weight on his frame. So I'm a little bit worried about just the maturation. If he can add the weights and play over 300 pounds and keep his athleticism that he has, I do think he has upside without question. I need to see how his body retains that weight and you are able to still remain athletic and still a good mover. So we'll see.
Yeah, I just generally, just to kind of reiterate, I agree with a lot of what you're saying. I think that it puts a really good perspective on it. You definitely see the potential. You definitely see what he can be, and he was a reliable starter. Notre Dame, again, always finds good offensive linemen, and at the very least, even Blake Fisher, who's probably one of the Sorry, worst is mean. One of the weaker offensive line prospects that Notre Dame has put out.
Underdeveloped
Yeah,
is probably a better word.
he still ended up going in the second round. So
bonkers.
no, yeah,
shocker
a
that
lot
he
of helmet
wasn't
scouting.
Shocker that he wasn't good as a rookie, though, right? So much of a shocker that year. But
by the way, I love to bring up with Blake Fisher. I for some reason do a lot of Texans media. I love to bring up when they're like, "Oh, who do you think gets moved around?" I'm like, Blake Fisher didn't want to play tackle when he was at didn't want to play guard when he was at Notre Dame. He's going to have to learn how to play guard. He is meant to be a guard. He should not be playing right tackle. They should bump him inside. Him over Scruggs, who I don't even know why they have Scruggs playing.
Juice Scruggs, baby. Juice Scruggs.
Why is he playing guard? I feel like he's not big enough to play guard. I don't know. Their
whole line he played mostly center at Penn State, didn't he, Scruggs? I thought he played mostly.
He did. I'm curious.
I thought he played a lot of center. I know he played some guard too, but I thought he played a lot of center at Penn State. Could be wrong about that, but
yeah, he was pretty. He's 6'3", 310, and he had 33-inch arms. I don't know. I've never understood why he was listed as a guard for them. Jarrett Patterson is meant to stay at center. That was his best position.
Well, he started some games last year, Jarrett. So
he's their projected center for this upcoming year.
Well, dude,
another guy. Wait. By the way, another guy who ended up getting drafted despite having a really bad season before he declared.
Who's that? Jarrett Patterson?
Yeah, Jarrett Patterson's last season in Indy wasn't
Jarrett Patterson, when he was a redshirt freshman, looked like he was going to be a dude, man. It looked like he was gonna be a dude, and he just never got better. And he just kind of got injured a couple times, and again, you just kind of lost a little bit of that explosiveness he had. And yeah, that was an unfortunate one. But Blake Fisher is never gonna play guard, probably. So we're probably just gonna keep fighting that battle until we can't. Apparently, he might play left tackle this year at some point. Like, I don't know. Dude.
They brought in Cam Robinson.
I know.
And they also, all right. Well, we're not here to talk about the Texans offensive line room. That's insane to me. That is one of the most mismanaged position groups in the NFL.
Where the hell do you think? Where is Ariante Ursary going to play? Is he going to move in the guard? He's going to play?
No, that he is not a natural guard for me. I think it's Cam Robinson left tackle, Ariante Ursary right tackle, bench Juice Scruggs, move Blake Fisher into guard, Jarrett Patterson, and then I think Titus Howard is the other guard that you have. That's not a bad offensive line. Those are a bunch of highly drafted guys that have some tools.
Cam Robinson's horrible. He's horrible. Horrible tackle.
I know that he is. All right. We got to get back on track. Guys, appreciate everyone who has sent us questions. We are going to continue to get through these. If you have a thought on the 2026 NFL draft, on the 2025 college football season, please send it to us in the chat. We will try to get to as many as possible. And also make sure you hit the like button on the stream to help us get some more reach. The next question that we had from Sauce and Sam: is there money to be made on linemen or not really, in your opinion? I wonder what do you think that means?
Like
money to me.
Wait. Say it again.
Is there money to be made on linemen or not really?
Is there money to be made on linemen or not?
I read this while you were talking, and it sounded like it made sense in my head. But now that I read it out loud, I don't know what he's asking.
Offensive tackles make a lot of money on the NFL level. So yes, there's a lot of money to be made if you're a good offensive tackle. Comparative to guard, I guess. I mean, if we're talking about like the interior line offensive tackle distinction, like it's more money to make a tackle if that's what it's asking.
Sam, if you're still in here, can you send us a clarification? We'd love to answer the question. It seems like I think I kind of get what you're getting at, but I'm not really like the way that you just tried to answer it, Ryan. I think seems like the what he was getting at. All right, let's get to the next question. Rack is actually sending us some good questions. No, do not add the Marca to the group chat. He asked us, you watch Keyshawn James newbie at New Mexico. Thoughts? 10 sacks, 2 against Oregon last year, multiple forced fumbles. If
the
I
Idaho
remember,
kid.
The Idaho kid who transferred with Coach Eck to go to New Mexico. And he also, let's lump this in really quick. Let's lump this in of, he also asked who's the top prospect in the 2026 draft from the FCS. I have not watched Keyshawn James newbie, but I do remember him being very disruptive for Idaho last year.
So yeah, I haven't watched him either. I know he's a little bit of a lighter kid. I think he's like 6'3", like 235, if I remember, somewhere in that ballpark. So I mean, I haven't watched him. Rack, if you can put it in the chat, do FCS players that are now on the FBS level count as FCS players being drafted in the NFL? Because that could change.
We had
this
that debate.
answer
We
a
had
lot.
that debate last
I think
last
they
week.
still count, right? I mean, they played at an FCS school, so they still count, kind of, right?
Sure, and I think that naturally, like people who follow, and me and Sean cover FCS football on the Hack City channel. We always count the guys that transferred up. Like we always talk about those guys ending up, being on the radar. So,
Right. Well, if I can count guys that are FCS players that have transferred up, my answer will be Connor Moore from Michigan State that was at Montana State. That would be my answer. Of true FCS players that are still there, Bryce Lance? Question mark.
that was who we said last week, and I think that first thought that I had: have you watched any pure FCS guys so far? Like, have you just watched any straight up FCS guys?
I've seen Bryce Lance in passing while finishing up Zabel last year and watching Mason Miller, the right tackle, but I didn't focus on Bryce Lance. So I don't have like a I don't have a draft grade on him. I just have some thoughts on him. So
Right. I mean, his highlights are pretty amazing. He's like one of those few guys. We talked about him last week, but like he's just one of those few guys that like really popped. He was huge for their national championship run this year. He had a couple of like really important late game impact plays where it just like really transformed the outcome for North Dakota State. He's got the size, the length, everything. I think he could be better than Christian Watson, just like again in passing of like, seeing what he's done.
does it make you mad seeing all the FCS guys transfer up and you can't claim them anymore? Does that make you angry?
No, why would that?
I don't know. Because I was thinking of like, do you remember Hunter Zambrano that played at Illinois State, the offensive tackle?
I do remember him. He transferred to Texas Tech. I think that he is.
They all transferred to Texas Tech. Cole Wisniewski's at Texas Tech now too,
right.
So they got all the FCS kids. Yeah,
Zambrano's an interesting kid. I think that he's somebody that we'll probably be talking about this year.
Yeah, I think he's a draftable offensive lineman just based upon pure talent. He just got hurt last year down the stretch of the season, so he's got upside. Cole Wisniewski is apparently playing Rover for Texas Tech. Like, I'm gonna hate it. I'm gonna hate every part of it. That kid needs to play linebacker. Like, I do not like the Rover thing.
I don't know why. Like, he's fast for a 6'4" FCS safety, and it's kind of like one of those things where like you wanted your best athlete to be playing over the top. But now that he's at Texas Tech, like, why don't they just move him to outside linebacker? Like, I think he'd be such a great, like, every down linebacker. Like, he can move in coverage. He has coverage skills. He's got range. Like, I don't know. If he is playing Grover, that is a huge disappointment.
He is an awesome football player, for a college player at least. Probably borderline draftable just because he's a little bit of a tweener, right? Like, is he athletic enough, flexible enough to play safety on the NFL level? Probably not. But does he have developmental potential and growth to be a second level defender and be a weak side linebacker, or at least a Sam that could play on some early downs? Like, it's possible, right? So I like him.
Curious how he recovers from the injury. The other guy, and I think I brought him up last week, Rex Connors from UC Davis. I will continue to stand on the table for. I'm surprised he didn't transfer.
I'm glad I sent him to you once upon a time. I'm glad
No. You sent me. Don't claim him. You sent me a long list. Charles Grant was in there. You sent me a long list of guys that just had award recognition. And you told me to watch them when we were at RPM. And Connors and Grant were the two guys that and Cam Scatterby were the three guys that I aggressively pushed for. And look how they turned out. I'm surprised that Connors didn't transfer. I'm really surprised that his representation didn't transfer.
He's got a twin brother on the team too, right? Doesn't Connors have a twin brother?
Yeah, I guess they probably wanted to take the twin brother with them, and I've heard that the twin brother's not that good.
He's definitely not Rex, that's for sure. Yeah. That's funny. Yeah. We'll see about Scatterby. Yeah, 4th round pick. Give me a break. Give me an absolute break.
That was the projection that I put out to you, though, 2 years ago. I said that I think he could be an early day 3 pick that will be a really good second running back in an offense.
But it's stupid. It's dumb. It's
just because you disagree doesn't mean it's dumb.
Yes.
All right, next question that we've got. Again, people who are sending questions, thoughts, whatever it is, in the chat. We will get to them. If you're tuning in on YouTube, please hit the like button. Let's get to some of the questions that we had from Twitter, because we're still waiting on some more, unless I missed any.
Well, Brian asked about Jake
Oh,
Slaughter.
yeah. What do you think of
Florida?
yeah, what do you think of Jake Slaughter?
I was very underwhelmed based upon some of the preseason hype I'm seeing on Jake Slaughter. Like based upon what people were talking about, I'm like, oh wow, that guy might be like a top 50 pick in a center one conversation. Maybe it was just the wrong game to watch, but I watched his Ole Miss game and I was very underwhelmed, man. Like very underwhelmed.
What was the reasoning?
I thought he did not sustain. I don't think that he sustained his blocks well. I thought that he fell off of blocks a lot. Like I don't know, man. Like I just did not like his film against Ole Miss. I'm gonna watch it with clear eyes on a couple other games, but like his Ole Miss game was rough in my opinion. Like I did not, and like some context, he's going against Walter Nolan, who's very talented. He's going against the Xavier Harris kid, who's massive, number 51. Like there's talent that he's going against, obviously, but you know he's going to play against on the NFL level, Joe. Talented defensive lineman. Like, you know what I mean? So like I didn't love it. You know who I thought took a nice jump comparative to the year before watching Florida? I thought Austin Barber, the left tackle, was a lot better last year than he was in 2023. Yeah. So I thought he took a nice jump. He could be a guy that could be a top 150, top 100 type of guy if he keeps rising. We'll see.
You really liked him last year, I remember. And he's just a decent player. He's got pretty good size. I will say,
he smoked Walter Nolan on one rep, man. Like took his soul and pancaked the dude. Like, yes.
I will say one center though, that a guy that we were texting about that I really liked. I watched him last night. I'm going to do a cut up of some of his best plays from the tape that I watched later today. Connor Lew from Auburn. I think if there's a first center that goes in the first round, it's going to be Connor Lew. That dude has really good instincts. He's not like super powerful. He's not like one of those guys that's going to be like a mauler, which I don't need that for my center. I just need a guy that plays with really good leverage, gets to the second level really well, plays with really good angles, knows how to track linebackers and defensive backs, and just knows how to contribute in double team situations in pass pro. His feet are so good. And you can kind of tell, I don't know if he's got a wrestling background, but he kind of gives me those vibes that he might have some sort of a wrestling background, just the way that he uses his hands and the way that he gets underneath guys.
Yep. No, Connor Lew is my early favorite to be the first center off the board of guys that I've watched so far. I think that he is I have a top 100 on him, but it might be a top 50. I can't remember. I don't have my notes in front of me, but I like Connor Lew a whole lot. I'll say this. Auburn quietly has a decent offensive line coming back next year. Like decent, like it's not bad. I mean, they have the right guard, Jeremiah Wright, has something to him. I'm not saying he's like a high level draft pick, but like he's a good college guard, if nothing else. Connor Lew, Dylan Wade at left guard, I think is a really good college offensive lineman at least. And they you know who they brought in? The Azarian Miller kid has some tools playing right tackle, but they also brought in Xavier Chaplin this offseason from Virginia Tech, the left tackle. So I don't know how good Jackson Arnold's going to be this year. And I don't know if Deuce Knight will be the quarterback at some points. I think we actually got a question about
someone did ask about Jackson Arnold. Yeah.
I don't know how good they're going to be a quarterback this year, just based upon Jackson Arnold not being that good and Deuce Knight being a true freshman. But the offensive line, I think, could be a sneakily pretty good unit for Auburn in 2025.
I also think that their like defense could be really underrated. The thing that just gets like really weird though, and Rufino and Joe show, we did Auburn preview on Sunday.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we talked about is like, man, their defense has some really underrated defensive linemen, and their secondary's got some really underrated players, and their receiving room has some dynamic athletes, and their offensive line, like we just talked about, is super underrated. But you had an issue where you took Peyton Thorne, who wasn't particularly turnover prone, and he became super turnover prone. And your decision to move forward with the next guy to start at quarterback for your team is a guy who had, I think, 3 interceptions, and he had something like 7 fumbles. He was one of the most turnover prone guys. Despite not starting the whole season, he turned the ball over that many times. So why, and one of the biggest criticisms of Hugh Freeze is that his offense doesn't set up his quarterbacks effectively to not turn the ball over. Like that has been a lot of people pointed out
a lot of ball handling, quarterback run game, like that type of thing.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
A lot of people have pointed out that like over his play calling career, a lot of the quarterbacks that he's had have thrown a lot of interceptions, have had a lot of fumbles. So it becomes really perplexing why you went and brought in one of the most awful, one of the worst guys at protecting the football who got benched because of it.
I don't know if we've ever talked about him, Joe, but I remember I covered Jackson Arnold when he was coming out of high school. Okay. I never understood the Jackson Arnold thing, man. Never understood it. The kid's 6'1", 210, has a solid arm. It's a pretty good mover, but like, why is he a 5-star? Why is Jackson Arnold a 5-star? I always ask myself, like, why the heck is
I don't
this
know.
kid
Yeah, I
a
don't know.
5-star? What
I don't know
about
what
him
the
is
trade
like
is.
5-star, dude? Like, my hope for Auburn is that Deuce Knight plays sooner than later for them, because at least that kid has upside. Like, he has a lot of upside. Is he going to make some mistakes? Yes. But Jackson Arnold's going to make mistakes too, and he has a lower ceiling than Deuce Knight has. So let the young kid make mistakes and let him have a couple bad turnovers, because his upside is immense. So I hope that they go to him earlier but I do think there's some support. Auburn is quietly, again, underrated offensive line, but they've turned over that wide receiver room pretty well over the last couple years as well. Like when Freeze first got there, their wide receiver room was horrible. Like it was terrible. But now you have Cam Coleman, you have Eric Singleton, and it's like, okay, all right, we can work with this. So yeah, hopefully that quarterback decision is changed at some point.
Yeah, it could be DJ Lagway-esque for, the season's not going well. Deuce Knight comes in, makes a couple like really nice plays, and then it just buys him time. As long as
it'd be funny.
Knight comes in and does some,
What would be funny though is if Jackson Arnold's horrible at the beginning of the year, or if he flounders and they go to Ashton Daniels instead of Deuce Knight.
They need to go to Deuce Knight. You can't play that game. You need to. If Deuce Knight looks like even like a semblance of the dude that people were hyping him up to be, play him. If your team looks like it's fallen off a cliff, at least regain the morale of the team by letting the freshman go out there and make some big plays. And it's what happened with Florida. Florida's tone completely changed when DJ Lagway started for Florida. It could be the same exact way. So we
saved his job, probably saved their head coach's job with the promise that he showed. Yep, agreed.
We had another question from IGK that I missed. Carson Heidecker from Ohio. Do you have any thoughts on him?
Nothing on him at the moment. IGK, that's more of a ask me in the middle of the season when I get a little bit more deep into the class, right? Or because to be honest with you, probably not going to watch him in the preseason. Probably not, right? So like that's more a middle of the season type of conversation.
Right. Brian asked a really interesting question though. Where is Ernest Green's best position at the NFL level?
The bench?
I don't think he's that bad. Like I don't think
he's horrible. He's horrible, Joe.
Stop it. You think he's horrible?
He got benched. He's horrible, dude.
No,
he's so bad.
He was hurt,
dude. He got benched. He's horrible, Joe. He's a horrible football player.
I don't think that he got benched. I think that we're missing something here.
He's horrible. Horrible football player. He's a guard though. He's a guard.
Yeah, wait, hold on. You're wrong.
No, I'm not wrong. He sucks. He's horrible.
November 18th, Georgia football injury report. Dylan Bell, Trevor Etienne, Ernest Green. Ernest was going to be at game time. This was on November 18th. Ernest was going to be a game time decision. He's still struggling with the arm that he was out there giving everything that he had. See, I'm not going to let you slander my boy. Ernest Green, man.
Listen to me. And cut this for later. Ernest Green is not going to be a top 100 pick. He stinks.
That's fine. I think that to imply that we can't imply that he got benched because he was bad. I thought the same thing, and
he should have gotten benched. He should have gotten benched then. Is that better? He should have gotten benched.
I don't think that he is that bad. And also, I would float this out there to answer this question. I actually think he'd make a good center. I don't think he's a good tackle. Like, I don't think it makes sense for. I think he moves really well. I think he's got really.
Center.
I think he's got really light feet.
Center.
That's not a bad take. I think he moves really well.
He's a refrigerator. I don't
know if that's a good descriptor for him. You and I have watched two different players.
He looks like a fridge. Like he is he's a block of mess. He's an absolute mess of a football player.
We have watched two different players. I don't know. I think mess is an extreme way to describe. I thought that in 2023, his tape was good enough to consider him to be one of the better offensive linemen in the country. And he got hurt and he didn't improve.
Is he going to start this year at Georgia?
Yes, he's projected to start.
To where? At what position?
I think right tackle. Wait, let me look it up.
They're playing him at tackle still. Poor guy. Poor guy. Who's their quarterback? Gunnar Stockton still? Poor kid.
Right
Absolutely.
tackle. Monroe Freeling at left. Micah Morris
Yes.
at left guard. Drew Bobo at center. Daniel Calhoun at right guard.
That might be the worst Georgia starting offensive line in years. That is a horrible offensive line. You think that's a good offensive line?
I don't think it's as bad as you're making it out to be.
Who is the good player on that offensive line?
Ernest Green. I don't know why you're so out on Ernest Green. Like I think that like there's at least something to be had there. There's something to.
Well, I mean, yeah, I'm sure he has a lot of things like food and
okay,
he eats a lot.
He
does eat a lot. I'm sure.
Now you're just being mean. Brian. Okay, now he's just naming random players. These guys.
What, Wendell Moe?
Yeah.
I know Wendell Moe. He was the Arizona transfer. He was the guard. He's left guard, number 72. Where did he get transferred to though? He went somewhere.
I'll look it up.
Wendell Moe transferred to. I know this. He went to. I was
Tennessee.
just looking at Tennessee. Oh yeah. So him and Sam Pendleton. Pendleton was the Notre Dame guard that got benched. Went down to Tennessee. That's two of the interior offensive linemen. Wendell Moe's huge. He's pretty strong. Good in tight spaces. I just think he's very tight, and I think his body needs a little bit of reconfiguring. So there's some talent there. I just think that I just think that he's development away. I thought that the tape was just very inconsistent. I thought the lateral mobility was limited.
All right, let's get to a couple of Twitter questions, and then we'll close out. We'll do two more, and then we're going to wrap up. At Chandria Smith asks us, how is the 2026 draft class stacking up at premium positions like quarterback, edge rusher, and offensive tackle compared to recent years? So to answer that in the comparison, this quarterback class, as we talked about last week, has a lot of potential, does not have like a surefire guy. We don't think that Arch is going to declare. I think it is, in the last 10 years, is probably top 6. Like, I don't think it's like it has the potential to be better than that. There's a lot of question marks. I think offensive tackle is in the upper half, and I think edge rusher is in the upper half as well. All of these position groups have guys who are highly recruited, that have really rare traits, are explosive, but have question marks. So there's a really good shot by the end of the season, Ryan, that we're talking about all three of those position groups in a very different way. Like, we could either be saying that, like, oh, this is one of the best tackle classes we've ever seen. It's one of the best edge classes we've ever seen. Or we could be doing the complete opposite of, man, this tackle class sucks. Man, this edge class is really underwhelming.
I think the quarterback upside is, I think the quarterback class will end up being better than last year. That would be my guess as of today. I think it has that upside.
I would be shocked if it's as bad as last year. Like, there's just such a difference
in depth, right?
Right.
Like, there's a talent up top. So I would say the quarterback class this year, I would give it an early edge to 2025. I think the tackle class, I think a probability that it is a better tackle class than this past year. Not necessarily a pure offensive line class, because I thought the interior offensive line class in 2025 was like sneakily pretty good. Yep. Like, it didn't have a lot of great centers, but it had some really good guards in it. But I think the tackle class has more upside. I think the edge group, I think the 2025 edge would probably be better than 26, most likely. I think. I don't
think it's far off though. I think it's, I don't want to say it's like really close, but like, I think that it's, if we had to, if we were trying to create a visualization, like, this is 2025, I think 2026 is just like one step below. And there's a potential that it could kind of even, it's not going to have the same amount of depth, but I think that there's more options at the top of the class. And I think that last year's class was impacted by Nick Scourton underperforming and being fatter than we wanted him to be. James Pierce Jr. not improving the way that we wanted him to. Michael Williams not improving in the way that he wanted to. There's a chance that TJ Parker and Keldrick Folk and all of these players that we're already talking about a little bit, that could end up making big leaps.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I would say it's more likely that it's a lower end class compared to 2025, but there is some developmental upside to be maybe an equal group overall. I've only gotten through a few edges so far. Like, I've watched TJ Parker, I've watched Mateo Uiagalelei, I've watched Will Helt, I've watched a few of those guys, and I think there's definitely developmental upside. Last year at this time, I was way more excited about James Pierce Jr. than anybody that I'm excited about in this class. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how I would profile it.
All right. Last question we're going to get to, and then we're going to close out.
Mm-hmm.
More of a philosophical question. This is from Voluntary Joel 41. I wonder what's voluntary about him. At what point do quarterbacks in the NFL draft, other than the obvious generational talents, go the way of running backs and are drafted by their merits instead of projections? So essentially asking, at what point do the guys that we put into that premier bucket of quarterbacks, when do we start to consider what their production was like into the conversation? I mean, my first thought is, unlike any other position, it is the most uniquely evaluated position where the production actually almost doesn't really mean anything to me. I don't.
At quarterback, you're talking about?
Yeah, like there's plenty of guys that were productive in college that don't go on to be. It's one of the few positions where that happens, where college production doesn't translate. And a lot of times we talk about guys that were supremely unproductive in college, but flashed a lot, that got taken by a team that was patient, built around him, and then a guy panned out. Josh Allen is a perfect example of that. Somebody on the other end of the spectrum, two guys, Jaden Daniels, Lamar Jackson, are on the other end of the spectrum that were really productive, really toolsy, but they had the constant conversation of like, man, this is a rare trait, the speed, the arm talent, whatever it was.
I think, just kind of working back to a previous comment I made about like the quarterback development factor, I think that experience matters so much. Like so much. I mean, Joe, it's almost comical at this point to just look at the 1-year starting quarterbacks that come in with a lot of hype and to just put down they're not going to work out. Like it just I mean, Mark Sanchez, Anthony Richardson is another where it's just like they didn't play enough. They were 1-year starters and they flamed out in the NFL. Is there a quarterback that you can think of that was a 1-year starter that became a good NFL quarterback in recent years? I'm sure there's historically a few of them, but like in recent years, Lamar Jackson was a multi-year starter. Josh Allen was a multi-year starter. Patrick Mahomes was a multi-year starter. Like where are these 1-year starters? But on the other side, like a 1-year starting edge, I don't care. I really don't care about that. Yeah. I don't like the positions that are more about developmental, the positions that are more buoyed by overall athleticism and just athletic skill set. I don't care about experience as much in college, but I care about it for quarterback. I care about it for offensive tackle, offensive line in general, the positions that experience matters so much. So, yeah, just talking out loud for the experience factor. There's just some positions where I don't care if they only started for 1 year. Don't, but quarterback is one. Absolutely.
Well, and I think also too that like talking about with edge guys, you need to ultimately in college, a lot of these defensive linemen that come out of high school, even if you're a 5-star, you need to go through a strength training program. You need to add weight. You need to add more bulk. You need to prepare your body. And that is a multi-year process. You can then, after spending 3 years in the gym, win with your athleticism, win with your strength, win with your hands, all of those things behind the scenes as a rotational rusher. There's no such thing as a rotational quarterback. It is not we see Michael Williams is a really good example where not like a great example, but like one where Georgia had a lot of really good defensive linemen. He was a highly recruited kid. He is more rotational as a freshman, starts to increase his role, becomes a first-round prospect. Right. Quarterbacks aren't afforded that same.
Shamar Stewart might be a little bit better of a comparison for that.
It's another one where like he shows up, he gets on the field, and he shines with his tools enough to make him a first-rounder.
Yep.
Quarterbacks can't do that. But at the same time, as long as that guy has played multiple years and he has shown an ability to take over games, a natural decision-making, those are the things that I value more than I just value guys that have high completion percentages, guys that have good touchdown interception ratios, guys that have a lot of passing yards. Because a lot of times, especially in the college game, those numbers are inflated. In a lot of these offenses, they're inflated.
Yep, agreed. Chester, I've never used the shake weight before. I have not. I cannot say that I have.
All right. Well, on that note, we're ending the show. All right, everybody. At Joe DeLeon at Rising Draft. We're going to be back next Wednesday, same time as always, noon Eastern time.